It's very difficult to review an album that holds such a special place in your heart. This album, Moersmål, put out by Emilie Lorentzen, her debut album, came out just 2 days before my old childhood buddy, my big fluffy golden retriever Boone, had to be put down because of some pretty serious health problems. He lived a long life, he was a very happy pup. Any of you who follow me on social media know that I loved that dog like a brother. As a matter of fact, I've never even referred to him as a pet. So for those of you who have reached out to me, words of comfort, I really appreciate it. It's really meant a lot to me to have all of you, to have Boone bring a smile to some of you the way that he always brought a smile to me. And this album came out just 2 days before all this happened to me, and I knew I'd be reviewing it. I got to know Emilie at Moersmål. I really admire her as a musician. She's very special, just as I want to know what's in the water at that Lorentzen household growing up, because between her and Jonas, there's some serious musical talent over there, even suspiciously so. The reason this is all immediately relevant to Moersmål is because this is Emilie Lorentzen's debut as a traditional folk musician representing her native island of Bornholm. This is why I've decided to record this video in front of one of the very few bodies of water you can find in Boulder, Colorado, because the island itself plays such a huge role in Emilia's creative vision and her inspiration for this album. Now, for any traditional folk musicians listening, you're probably going to be familiar with this phrase, but a phrase that I've learned to associate with Nordic folk music from playing with and getting to know traditional fiddlers and folk musicians is that with Nordic folk music, you smile with a tear in your eye. And I really it cannot be overstated how effectively Emilie Lorentzen carries this ethos, consciously or not, throughout this album, because just like all my memories with Boone and my old pup, smiling with a tear in my eye, that's exactly the experience I had listening to Moersmål front to back for the first time. Now, about Emilie Lorentzen herself, she is a musician in Heilung, primarily a vocalist, but also an instrumentalist as well. She's very talented and a very passionate performer, for those of you who have seen her on stage with Heilung with this blood craze in her eyes. We talked about that in our interview. It's just a very liberating and free experience to be a part of that music. So that is how she is usually performing music in front of people. And so this album, Moersmål, Mother's Tongue, or the Mother Tongue, is her introduction of herself in a more traditional folk music context. The album itself is an ode not only to her native Bornholmian dialect, as she is a linguist. She majored in university and college. It is also an ode to what I've learned from her is it's an ode to her mother, because in that way it's sort of a double entendre. Mother tongue, but these songs also remind her of her mother as well. Now, Elverhøy has been out for quite some time as the single to the EP. It's the appetizer, the taster, if you will, to the rest of Moersmål, the precursor to the album coming out. What I find so genius about this opening to this EP, where this motif of motherhood or motherliness runs through it, whether it be linguistically or in terms of like an actual biological mother, Emilia, consciously or not, I feel sings in a very motherly tone. Her voice is very comforting, it's very sweet, it's very gentle. And I feel like that's the best way to introduce an album with this motherly motif running through it. So instead of me babbling on about it, how about you listen for yourself?
Hun sang om træ med guldblad på, om fugle små i skoven, og om de mange pibler små, som ledte der i højen. Ja, hvor blev hun nu?
Now, besides just the thematic consistency with the rest of the album, I feel like what makes Elverhøy such an effective opener, an effective first impression on the track, is the fact that musically, it blossoms. And I have a really big weak spot for music that does this. Now, what do I mean? The song starts off with just a keyboard and a voice. Eventually, some overlaying synths, some ambient noises kick in, but then after that, a pizzicato violin kicks in. And those of you who are not classically inclined, that means the violin is going pling plong. You're plucking the string instead of bowing it. Now, after that kicks in, towards the end of the song, the violin does begin to bow, in harmony with Emilia's voice, where you would expect a second voice to be instead. This experience happens so smoothly that before you know it, you're not even listening to the same instrumentation as you were at the beginning of the song. It sort of sneaks up on you. And that's what I feel like makes this song so effective and what makes me keep coming back to it. It just keeps building up and blossoming like a flower from a bud all the way to that beautiful bloom we wait for at the end of spring.
It's a carp. That is a big boy.
Now, while Elverhøy shows Emilie Lorentzen's more tender and sensitive side as a vocalist, that doesn't last for long. For on the second track, Ha Dreviem, Emilia brings out her herd girl side, the side that has to get the attention of some pretty stubborn animals, most notably sheep. Now, as I always like to explain in these reviews, if you appreciate and enjoy having the music to listen to that I'm talking about, it's always weird when I just talk about music but we don't actually get to listen to it. Trust me, you've been there, we don't want to go back. I have to choose between having copywritten music in these reviews and being able to monetize a video. Now, that's a pretty stuck between a rock and a hard place situation that almost all content creators who deal with music criticism or music commentary have to deal with. So you can help make that choice a little easier by, for just $3, the price of a to-go coffee, joining the Patreon at patreon.com/the Nordic Sound channel. Support the show, $3 a month, and keep these videos rolling, keep the lights on. Also show your appreciation for the work I do on the Nordic music scene. But if you can't spare the money, like, subscribe, share this video with those who might be interested, spread the word, help grow this channel, and spread the good word of Nordic music. Now, for those of you who've been around the Nordic Sound channel for some time, you're probably pretty familiar with what a sætergirl is. Sæterjenten. The herd girls from Nordic history, particularly as I've spoken about them on this channel, in the context of Norwegian culture and history. Now, if you want to learn more about them, you can check out my history video on Ole Bull, the composer, as well as Valdemar Thrain. Both of them use herd girls as pretty effective icons of Norwegian independence, and so you really can't walk anywhere through romantic Norwegian music without stubbing your toe on a sætergirl. Now, these are the same herd girls that are associated with kulning, lokk, those sorts of herd girl calls that always take the internet by storm whenever someone posts a video of themselves doing it. It's a pretty enchanting way of singing, but it also has a purpose. So Emilie Lorentzen wanted to do her own version of this sort of cattle calling for her album because it's very rooted in Nordic tradition, especially with female singers. Now, Emilie Lorentzen in the interview explained that she tried doing the more stereotypical or the more traditional high-pitched voice that you usually hear associated with kulning or lokk. But she said that she really couldn't get the sheep's attention that way. She was experimenting this on sheep, and I really wish I could have been there to see this. But she then decided to instead use her very impressive and powerful belly voice, her stomach voice. And as she explained in the interview, the sheep came running immediately. So Emilia took the creative liberty to instead use that voice for the album, while including also those typical yips that go at the end of the phrases as well. And to me, it creates such a unique take on the genre, or the style that is kulning or lokk. And this would be my favorite track on the album, if not for Krogen.
Vågning til Gud
Krogen, to me, embodies all of the best aspects of traditional Nordic folk music, particularly going back to that sentiment of smiling with a tear in your eye. Because for how much fun this track is, Nordic pipes are always fun to listen to, the upbeat rhythm, that really playful fiddle line that keeps going, and of course, that childlike refrain that keeps coming back to bring a big ol' smile on your face. Despite all of these really happy aspects to it, the song still carries with it an oddly melancholic mood. Now, I can't place exactly where that comes from. Maybe it's my own personal experience that I talked about earlier. But folk music kind of does nostalgia best. And oddly enough, Krogen makes me nostalgic for Bornholm, despite the fact that I've never been there. And I didn't even know where it was on a map until about a month ago. So in that way, Emilie Lorentzen has crafted the ideal folk music experience of making you long for a time and a place that you were never a part of. But as the rest of this album and the rest of folk music tends to do very well, it does sort of bring you back to what might be a better time, a better place, and with better people who might no longer be around. And bringing it back full circle, I shed a tear every time I listen to the song because it reminds me of my boy Boone and just how much fun he had all the time and all the smiles he brought to me. Now, what is my ultimate review, my evaluation of Emilie Lorentzen's Moersmål? Putting aside my own sentiments as best I can, that I explained at the top of the video, this EP is nothing short of phenomenal. You experience so many different feelings, so many different emotions, so many different song styles, folk music styles, dance styles, singing styles, in just this short collection of 4 or 5 songs if you include the bonus track, that I really feel like it would be a sin to say anything less of this album. I don't have a damn thing to complain about it. It's just so pleasant front to back, and you just can't help but smile throughout the whole experience. And, that's a pretty special thing to say about an album, and that's a pretty special thing to experience in an EP, especially if it's someone's first. So please, if you haven't yet, do yourselves a favor. Put on Moersmål, buy the physical copy from her Bandcamp page, support her, put this album on, and just let yourself experience just the childlike joy that is listening to this album. You really won't regret it. And so friends, as always, thanks for watching another review here on the Nordic Sound channel. It's always a pleasure reviewing the new music from these incredible artists, and I hope that you're getting something out of it too. Now, you can support the show by hitting like, subscribing, leaving a comment, anything that helps bump it up in the search algorithm. Anything helps, really. You can also follow me on social media at american.scald for my personal page, or Nordic Sound channel on Instagram for the channel's Instagram page. You can also friend me on Facebook, Jameson Foster, pretty easy to find. And really, I appreciate the support that you guys continue to show me, and I hope that we can continue to make this a welcoming and effective platform for promoting Nordic music of all kinds here on YouTube and elsewhere. So, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you next time on the Nordic Sound channel.